Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Fairly Decent podcast. I am your host, Jason, and today we're going to get into a subject that's kind of hard to talk about sometimes because there's no real true definition of what it may be. And we're going to talk about happiness, right? So, what is happiness? I don't really truly think there's any true definition for it. We're going to go through some things that I think happiness consists of. And this is kind of a subject that I've been talking with a few people about, a couple doctors, and just, what it truly means. So there's almost nobody that doesn't say they want to be happier. Really, most people say, I just want to be happy. And so when we think about happiness, right, I've recently been taught to kind of think about happiness not as a destination, but more of a direction. Because true happiness, for someone to say that they're truly happy, they would have to eliminate all the things that, are keeping us alive, like sadness, anger, grief, all of that stuff. We need all of those other emotions, to stay sane and to stay alive. I don't believe there's anybody truly walking on planet Earth that has achieved total happiness. And that's not to say that you can't be extremely happy or the happiest you've ever been. Like I said, it's more about thinking of happiness as a direction, wanting to get more happy. And it's weird because you get into this conundrum of happiness and you start to think about well, Jason, what are you talking about? Because such and such makes me happy. And when I think about it, yeah, that is true. But is that happiness or is that just evidence of being happy? I know that sounds weird, but happiness is kind of the totality, of being happy. I think things can show evidence of making you happy and things like that, but I'm not sure that actually is bringing you happiness. And that's something that I'm still working on. I may come in here and say something completely different next week, but right now I think I'm looking at happiness as the totality of being happy and some of the other things that are included with happiness, and we'll get to those right now. So when we think about happiness, we think about the things that are associated with happiness, things that make us happy, and I've kind of taken some examples from some of the people I've talked to and kind of put my own spin on them a little bit. But something that I was taught very recently, which works for me because I understand it. Happiness is kind of broken down into three different things, right? We have your enjoyment, you have your satisfaction, and then you have your purpose. That kind of, all of those three things combined kind of give you what happiness is in totality. So one of the things that resonated with me the most, when we talk about enjoyment, a lot of the times we, get enjoyment and pleasure mixed up. So if you think about enjoyment, right? Enjoyment is this feeling that kind of sticks around, whereas pleasure is more of this fleeting sensation. You hit the switch and you get pleasure. You hit the switch and you get pleasure. And this is kind of what addiction is all based around, right? You take a drink, you feel better, it goes away. You take a drink, you feel better, it goes away. You take a drink, you feel better, it goes away, etc., etc. And it changes your brain chemistry to think of, things that bring you pleasure as enjoyment. But you can't mix the two together. The two are not the same. And there's a great example by Arthur Brooks. He says that, there's a reason Budweiser doesn't show you commercials with how a lot of people consume alcohol, right? Which is alone in their house drinking an entire 12-pack. They always show commercials with people enjoying it with friends and with family and making memories. And you notice I use the word enjoyment because a lot of enjoyment is based around memories. You don't look as enjoyment as, again, sitting at home and drinking by yourself. You call that pleasure because, again, pleasure is that fleeting sensation where it comes and it goes, it comes and it goes. It doesn't really stick around, whereas enjoyment, you build memories and you have family and your friends, that kind of feeling sticks around for much longer than pleasure does. And I'm not saying that you can't, create memories and enjoyment and, the feelings that are associated with happiness by yourself. You can totally find enjoyment in, hobbies that you do by yourself, things you do by yourself. You can certainly create memories. I'm just saying, typically enjoyment is associated with memories, and a lot of memories are associated with, having people around to share a memory with. That's what makes things more enjoyable. And then so we'll kind of switch gears with some of the things that I think happiness is associated with. So then we'll talk about satisfaction. And, when we talk about satisfaction, we talk about enjoyment again. And a lot of satisfaction comes when, you get enjoyment maybe after a struggle. Like when you say you have a test and you work really hard for that test and you do well on that test, you get that sense of satisfaction. Like, I earned this. I struggled, I went through it, and I achieved what I wanted to at the end. That is what I think satisfaction is. Now, obviously, there's a ton of ways that you can define satisfaction. I'm just talking about in the means of, finding happiness. So if we go back to the example of, going through a struggle and kind of making it out on the other end successfully, I think that's kind of what satisfaction is. Like, for example, you can learn how to sing, right? But if you put the song that you're going to sing and you keep the words in the song and you sing along with it, sure, it's probably going to sound great. But I don't think you're going to get the same satisfaction as if you just put the beat on and sing it by yourself. You know what I mean? I think that satisfaction is actually having to go through the struggle. And when you succeed on the other side, you get that sense of, I did it, because without a little bit of the struggle, I don't know that you truly find satisfaction in some of the goals you set for yourself, which goes back to something that I talk about a lot. I talk a lot about setting small, achievable goals kind of in this big picture of achieving one main goal. So in those small little goals, you have to kind of push yourself further and further each time. If you just continue to set yourself the smallest goal every single time, I don't know that you're going to get the same satisfaction as, if today I'm going to run a half mile and then you just continue to run a half mile, sure, you're going to feel good about yourself. But deep down, I know you probably think, well, I could probably go further. You have to inch your way towards that greater goal every single time, in these small goals, which, requires a lot of, I'm just going to say, like, mental, like jujitsu almost. Like, you have to be able to, like, take your default settings of your brain, like when it comes to your wants and your needs and all this stuff. You kind of have to, like, rewire it, to push your wants and needs kind of further each time, because eventually the same satisfaction that something gives you is going to eventually run out, right? So you have to continue to push yourself each and every time, or else your brain is just going to get caught in this feeling of unsatisfaction to something that used to give you satisfaction, right? And that's not to say that you can't, find peace and comfortability in things. I'm more talking about when you set yourself small goals and you're trying to achieve a bigger goal. You have to continue to push yourself in that sense. Like, you may be fine with running your half mile, but if you're telling yourself, I want to run a mile, well, then you're going to have to, eventually take that half mile and add stuff on every single time until you get to that mile. You can be perfectly fine with what you're doing, but if your end goal is something else, then you have to push yourself. And, I think that's why, I'm going to go back a little bit. I think that's why a lot of people, who are addicted to just anything, really, if you have an addiction that's kind of uncontrollable, you start out and whatever your addiction is, it brings you pleasure and it brings you satisfaction. And then, over time that you just lose that satisfaction. And I think that's why a lot of people, become depressed and just continue to spiral downwards because, you're chasing this feeling, and, you're ending up short every single time. So, I mean, the dissatisfaction and what once brought you satisfaction, that is just, it's a terrible mind game. So then we get to the last bit, right? And this is kind of the most heavy portion of things, I think, when we think about happiness, and that's purpose. And going through these therapy sessions, my introduction to purpose was, kind of a smack in the face. And I'll kind of bring it to you guys the same way. When you think about purpose, you can just basically think about it in two questions. And I'll ask these two questions, and I want you guys to really think about it. And again, there's no right answers. Everybody's answer is probably different, or some people's may be the same. But the two questions are, why are you alive? And for what are you willing to die? Now, off just first listen, those are kind of just general questions. But if you actually sit down and think about it, like, why are you alive? And I know for me, when I first started these practices, to make myself a better person, that question really took me a long time, because for a long time I didn't know. And that was just my answer from the beginning, I don't know. And that's probably the answer that, most people will have, because a lot of people don't actually stop to think about it. You go through daily life, and you go through your repetitions, and you live this life of trying to avoid unhappiness that you almost don't know where to look for happiness. You're so focused on not being unhappy that you forget to be happy. And, it took me being on my deathbed and not die to kind of find my meaning. I think, part of the reason why I'm here is to do this podcast and to spread some of this some of these things that I'm learning as we go, and kind of sharing them with you, and hopefully some of this stuff resonates with you if you're going through any of the same things that I went through or am currently going through. It's always a constant process. The wheel never stops. So again, there's no real right answer to the question. But I just ask that, you sit down for a little bit and kind of ask yourself that question. And, why are you alive? And we'll piggyback off that question and get into the next question. And like I said, that's for what are you willing to die? And again, there's no real right or wrong answer to the question. But it's just something that, you need to think about, like, for what are you willing to die? Like, what are you willing to die for? And, I thought about it for a long time. And again, it's an ongoing process. So what you feel today may be different next week, may be different next year. But for right now, I think the answer to, that question for me would be, the welfare of my family and, my close friends. And, you take those two questions and you combine them together, and, that's kind of the easy answer to, your purpose. You could break it down a lot further, but, just for the time being, just think about those two questions and try to come up with answers for both that are genuine, honest answers. And if your answer is, I don't know, then simply your process is just still working. And, like I said, the process is always working. The wheel never stops. So just because you don't know yet doesn't mean that you won't find yourself at some point. Yeah, so just some things to think about, as we go through this thing called life. Every single day is different. Life is about struggles, ups and downs, fighting through them, and just doing the best you can every single day. I can't stress that enough. Not every day is going to be great, and not every day is going to be shitty, but again, set yourself those small goals, in progress to that big goal. And again, when we talk about happiness, try to think about it as a bigger picture, and kind of think about the things that happiness is involved with, enjoyment, satisfaction, purpose. Just kind of try to figure those things out as you can. Again, everybody's different. I'm just giving you my perspective on it. So thank y'all for coming back this week. Again, I'm your host, Jason. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. We have some big announcements coming throughout the week, so make sure you guys go follow me on Instagram. Everything is at FairlyDecentPod. So go ahead, check those out. All the links will be on those platforms. All sort of updates, all of that stuff is through the Instagram and through the Twitter at FairlyDecentPod. So yeah, thank y'all for coming back again this week, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.